The cake sat untouched on the table, its candles flickering in the afternoon light. 64 today? Marion Blake stared at the frosting until the letters of her own name blurred together. Happy birthday, Mom, the inscription read in blue icing, written by her neighbor, not her son. From the living room came the sound of a television turned up too loud. A sports commentary, shouts, laughter. Her son, Daniel, occupied the couch like a landlord inspecting property he'd inherited. Mom, you didn't get my soda? He called, irritation already creeping into his voice. Marion sighed quietly, smoothing the hem of her cardigan. I bought what was on sale, Daniel. You know the doctor can mind his own business, he interrupted, never looking away from the screen. He was 39, broad-shouldered, and worn around the edges. Like a man who had once believed he'd be great, but had instead learned to settle for control. Her neighbor, Ruth Harper, stood awkwardly near the doorway, holding a small gift bag. Maybe I should go, Ruth murmured, sensing the tension. No, please stay, Marion said softly, the same way she'd said it 100 times before, to guests, to excuses, to herself. The slap-it happened faster than she could think. She had asked him gently if he could start helping with the mortgage, just a small contribution since he'd found a job at the new car dealership. He laughed at first. You're serious? And when she didn't laugh with him, his expression changed. You've got some nerve, Daniel said, stepping closer. After everything I've done for you. What you've done, Marion echoed. Her voice trembled. You've lived here rent-free for 5 years, Daniel. I'm drowning in bills. The sound came like thunder. His palm struck her cheek. For a second, there was only silence. Ruth gasped, dropping her gift bag. Marion stood frozen, her hand on her face, the sting spreading across her skin. From the hallway, a voice. Oh my God! It was Ava, Daniel's girlfriend of a few months. Her phone raised, recording. Daniel turned toward her, furious. You delete that right now. But Ava ran. Out the door, down the street. By the time Marion could breathe again, Daniel was gone too, tires screeching, anger echoing through the quiet neighborhood. The video, the next morning. Marion woke to a world she didn't recognize. Her landline buzzed nonstop. Messages piled in. It was Ruth who finally came to her door, pale and trembling, tablet in hand. Marion, it's everywhere, she whispered. On the screen, a viral video titled, Man Slaps Elderly Mother for Asking Help. The image of her own face, shocked, red, humiliated, stared back at her from every feed, every platform. By noon, there were interviews, hashtags, statements from strangers. By evening, Daniel's employer had suspended him pending an internal review. Marion wanted to disappear. But the internet wouldn't let her. The awakening. 3 days later, a young woman appeared at her door. I'm Ava, she said. I filmed it. I didn't mean for it to go viral. But I couldn't stay silent. Marion invited her in. The girl looked nervous, guilt written across her face. I left Daniel, Ava said. After that night, I saw who he really was. I want to help you if you'll let me. Marion had never heard those words before. I want to help you. Not from her father, not from her late husband, not from her son. And something in her, something quiet and buried, began to move. The letter in the attic a week later, while clearing space for roof repair workers, Marion found a wooden box in the attic. Inside, her mother's handwriting, delicate cursive on yellowed paper, letters she had never known existed. April 1972. I've hidden $15 in the lining of my coat. Maybe one day I can take Marion away. She deserves sunlight, not shadows. If you ever read this, my darling, don't let life silence you. Speak, even if your voice shakes. Marion pressed the letter to her heart. Her mother had tried to escape too, from her father's cruelty, from the silence that had defined generations of women in their family. That night, Marion began writing, her own words, her own history, in a plain notebook she found in the kitchen drawer. It started as a whisper and grew into something like a heartbeat. New allies, the video continued spreading. A journalist named Clara Wren reached out, a calm, respectful woman in her 40s. "I'd like to tell your story, Mrs. Blake," she said, "but only if you want it told." Marian hesitated, then agreed. Her words were printed a week later in the Hartford Times under the headline, "A Slap Heard Around the World," and the silence that followed. Letters poured in, donations, messages from strangers thanking her for speaking up about elder abuse. A local attorney, Maria Chen, offered to represent her pro bono, discovering that Daniel had secretly used Marian's name to take out a $25,000 loan. Maria also found discrepancies in the mortgage documents, evidence that Marian's late husband, Leonard, had siphoned money from her pension during their marriage. It was as if decades of hidden wrongs were surfacing, one by one, demanding to be seen. A gathering of truth. 2 months later, Marian hosted a meeting at her home. Around her table sat Ruth, Ava, Clara, Maria the attorney, and Henry Doyle, a retired detective now working in financial investigations. They were there to decide what to do about Daniel. Henry placed a file on the table. "We have proof of the forged loan, multiple manipulation incidents, and evidence of coercive control. You can press charges." Marian looked out the window toward the back cottage Daniel had once occupied. "I don't want to destroy him," she said softly, "but I won't protect him anymore." Instead of pressing charges immediately, she decided to give Daniel a choice: therapy, restitution, and a legal agreement preventing further contact until he completed treatment. It was not forgiveness. It was accountability. The turning point. When Daniel arrived a week later, he found the living room full, not of accusers, but of witnesses. Each person spoke calmly, outlining facts, not anger. And when his usual tactics, charm, deflection, denial, failed, he finally looked at his mother and whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You did," Marian replied, her voice steady. "But you can still decide who you'll be next." It was the first time in his life that someone had forced him to face himself without shouting or surrender. Rebuilding months passed. The repairs were done. The house no longer leaked, and neither did Marian's spirit. She joined a writing workshop at the community library, taught by a woman named Gloria. At first, she wrote in secret. Then she shared her story aloud for the first time. The room fell silent, several people crying quietly. "You have a gift," Gloria told her. "You don't just survive. You translate pain into light." Marian's essays began appearing in local newsletters. Soon after, a small publisher offered her a book deal for a memoir titled The Sound of Standing Up. A new chapter one evening, as autumn leaves scattered across Waverly Street. Henry arrived with a gentle smile and a question in his eyes. "I'm too old for surprises," Marian teased. He laughed. "Then how about something predictable? Tea, conversation, and company?" She smiled. "That sounds like everything I've ever wanted." By winter, her book had reached thousands. Women and men wrote to her about finding courage, setting boundaries, and recognizing manipulation. Even Daniel, in therapy now, sent her a letter. "I won't ask for forgiveness. I'll earn it, one honest day at a time." It came with his first repayment check. Small, but real. Full circle on, her 65th birthday, the house glowed with warmth and laughter. Ruth, Ava, Clara, Maria, Gloria, Henry, all gathered around the table. There was another cake, the candles bright and steady. Daniel stood by the door, quieter than before, his eyes softer. He handed her a wrapped box. Inside was a framed copy of her mother's letter. "For the woman who broke the silence," he said. Marian looked around the room. The chosen family she had built, the life she had claimed. The scars were still there, but they no longer defined her. As the candles flickered, she closed her eyes and made her wish. Not for youth, not for wealth, but for courage, the kind that continues long after the applause fades. She exhaled, and the lights went out. Epilogue. Weeks later, on a quiet morning, Marian received a message from a stranger online. Your story saved my mother's life. She left an abusive home yesterday. Thank you for speaking when I couldn't. Marion smiled through tears, typing her reply slowly. You're welcome. Keep speaking. The silence ends with us. And in that moment, the house on Waverly Street, once filled with fear and echoes, finally felt alive again.